Light Fragments Oracle. I am so happy that you are here with me today. Today is going to be an interesting topic. And I am sure that there will be a lot of cognitive dissonance surrounding the topic that I want to explore with all of you. So we're going to have a little chat. I'm going to put on some makeup and then I'm going to head out to take care of one of my customers this afternoon. I don't even know how to begin. Well, let me begin from the beginning. It's always a good place to start, right? Let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. About a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine posted on Facebook. This is not just a Facebook friend. This is somebody I met when I used to go to venues where I could paint my soul auras that I've talked about. And if you don't know anything about that, go onto my channel. I'll try to put the link up here. It's the introduction to my channel, basically. Even though I do makeup and all of this, my hope is to morph more into that and do that too, as well as empowering women. And this channel is more about empowering women that are, beyond 40. Once you hit that 40 mark and up. And I've become very sensitive since I saw my friend's Facebook post to how I want to go about doing this. And there are many reasons, which if I don't have time to get into in this video, I will do a part 2. So she put up this post. And it was in reference to Rich Cooper's YouTube channel called The Unplugged Alpha. And the way she put it was very nonchalant. It wasn't critical. It was her take on it. I've been watching The Unplugged Alpha. I've been watching Rich Cooper's Unplugged Alpha. And I agree with, or he makes a lot of good points, is how she said it. And basically, he wants women to go back and live in the 1950s. And so, I could feel myself being triggered. I could feel myself, becoming enraged. Because I have, young daughters. I would call them young. My youngest is 36. 36. Yeah, I think I got that right. And 36, 37. And I feel like saying that way will trigger just about every woman on the planet today because of feminism. And so my intention was to head over to his YouTube channel and go into listen to some of the videos and go into the comment section and just blow him right out of the water. That was my intention. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Because I realized that what he was talking about, his channel came about primarily for men. It was a men's channel. It was to give men a platform to go to discuss their feelings and how they were being treated in today's society. And while I began watching the videos, my feeling about wanting to, blow him right out of the water, changed. He's not saying that a woman has to go back to the 1950s. That's not what he's saying. That would be ridiculous. We don't live in the 1950s. But what he is saying, that biologically, what men are looking for in a woman, they cannot find today. It's very rare. And that the feminist movement has betatized men. It's made them soft. And so after listening to, oh gosh, I think I've listened to well over a dozen videos, and also his ladies' night videos, which I think is awesome. I mean, he's including women in his channel. After listening to all of these videos, I can see what he's talking about. Because women, if women on one hand are looking for a guy that will support them so that they can stay home and have children and raise their children without shipping them out to a nanny or shipping them out to a daycare provider. And a lot of men today have stepped back and they expect too little from themselves, because women now have their hands on the wheel and they're like, I don't need a guy. I can take care of myself. I can make the money. I can buy a home. I am set. I don't need a guy, but I want a guy. And so what does that tell a guy? Well, she's got everything. She doesn't need my money. She doesn't need my approval. She doesn't need me to be the man. I mean, she could pay somebody to mow the lawn, to pick up the garbage, to da. So she needs me for sex. Is that what she's looking for? She needs me for emotional support, to support her emotions. Well, essentially, she doesn't want a man. She wants a woman. And I could see this from watching the Ladies' Night podcasts, that's exactly what they want. Not all, but a good majority of women. And then they get into their mid-30s to late 30s and they're starting to think, okay, I've got it all and I want to settle down and I want to have a family. And their biological clock is ticking. This is biology. They're not going to be able to find a man that, unless they're willing to give all that up and have children and whatever, they're not going to find the caliber of man that they are looking for. They're not. It's going to be very rare, because most men by this age have already had families. They've already, met someone and they're probably divorced, because most marriages today or long-term relationships end in some kind of split. And so I wanted to try to figure out exactly why that is. And his channel completely threw me into cognitive dissonance, because I was a woman that came, I was born in the late 50s. I went through the 60s era, burn your bra, the Vietnam War. into the 70s, where there really was a push at this point for women to go to college and learn a career. I mean, they weren't telling us in school to settle down and meet a successful guy and have babies. We didn't hear that. And if this was, as a woman, in the back of your mind, you're saying, I want to meet a guy. You're not being programmed to do that. You're being programmed to go to college, learn a career, graduate, get that job, keep that job, and eventually climb the ladder and make the money. And that is true. I even wanted that for my girls, for a different reason than what they talk about on the Unplugged Alpha channel. It was different because I lost my husband. I was only 35 when I lost my husband to death. And I saw how important it would be if that were to happen to my daughters, that they would be able to take care of themselves, with or without children. So I feel like it does depend on the situation. But did I want to be single for the rest of my life at 35? No. Absolutely not. So let's stop for a little bit. I'm using my Ting Fei palette that I got from Temu. And I'm using this color right here. And I'm just going to do a simple eye look. I don't want to take too much time putting on makeup. And I think that it's noteworthy to sit back and not make a knee-jerk judgment, which is what I had done initially when I saw her Facebook post. And I think that she worded it in such a way that I was intrigued, but she wasn't, cutting anybody down. And I wouldn't say that Rich is looking for a woman that comes from the 1950s. Or any other guy for that matter. I feel that it's deeper than that. I feel that today it is very hard to find a woman that will want to cook and clean and have children and stay home. Particularly if she's looking for a guy. Now, she's successful. She can take care of herself. If she's looking for a guy that makes equal pay or more. And I also think it's important to note that these traditional values that I feel that my mother instilled in me when I was younger, and also I went to college. I was the only one of the four of us that went to college. My mom worked. It wasn't a question of wanting to. It was a question of having to. And so I feel like it is situational. But when it came to cooking, cleaning, and all of that, my dad didn't do any of that. None of it. Until later on in their marriage, my dad would sometimes cook on the weekends because he enjoyed it. I mean, that was his choice. It wasn't like, he was given no choice by my mom to have to cook a meal. because she always did the cooking. And my father was a great sport. He wasn't picky. He was like, he ate everything my mother put on the table. He was more concerned about having the food and working the job and being the head of the household. And so, yeah, that is a traditional relationship. And eventually, my father had fixed up my parents' first home, sold it, and built a house for my mother, and then told her, you do not have to go to work. You got everything you wanted right here. You can stay home, be a wife, be a mother, and here's your house. So I think that what's happening is that men are now expecting too little of themselves, and women are expecting way too much from men. And I can say this with all my heart because I was in a relationship where my husband passed away, and I had to, because of his illness periodically, pick up the slack and do everything. So I kind of became, I've always been strong. My dad taught me how to paint. My dad let me use the riding lawnmower because I wanted to learn. My dad, I used to watch him, snow blow the driveway and think, someday I want to do that. I liked those kinds of chores. And it didn't mean that I wasn't feminine. I just felt like, okay, in my first marriage, he's my husband. He has a physical condition. He's leaving to commute an hour to go to work all day, commute an hour home, and I'm not going to let the lawn get 2 feet tall. My kids are outside playing, I'm going to mow that lawn. When my kids are outside playing in the snow, I'm going to shovel the driveway. Because the alternative would be not good for his physical health. And his physical problem had nothing to do with him not being in shape. He was very much in shape. He was very athletic. His problem was a misdiagnosis at 12 years old of an illness that he did have, but was told he didn't have. And it destroyed part of his heart. And I knew this going into the marriage. And he probably knew that I was kind of strong in that area and I'd be able to pick up the slack. So, yeah, that worked. But when I met my second husband, he loved all those things about me, but then he liked being the head of the house in other areas. And so there were definitely complications. But in watching Rich's channel, by the grace of God, we've stayed together. And I do not want to paint this picture that our relationship doesn't still have challenges. But for the most part, what has made this relationship work is me conceding. I had to recognize that I didn't like to say I was sorry about something I said. I had to recognize that even though I'm choosing to still work, I run a small business, as all of you know, and now I have this YouTube channel. I still cook all the meals. I still do the laundry. I still do the pink jobs, as Rich would like to call them, or, the guys on his channel call them. And my husband does the blue jobs. he takes care of the generator. He takes care of putting all the oil and, changing the oil in the lawnmower and the snowblower. If something breaks, he fixes it. He takes care of our furnace because he's a heating tech / plumber. He also is proficient in sales. So he has worn a lot of hats in his day. And if something goes wrong, we recently had something go wrong with our water softener. He took care of that. He called the best guy. And it was like I rearranged my schedule. I rearranged my work schedule to meet the guy, not my husband, because of the kind of job that he has. And I tell my customers, look, I have to be flexible. If you got a problem with the fact that I need to call you and tell you we have to reschedule, something came up. If you've got a problem with that, because I run a cleaning business, I want to say to them, which I don't, but it's crossed my mind, clean your own damn house. I clean mine, but I don't say that. I just expect them to understand. And if they can't, then I can't keep them as a customer. Because my husband and what goes on around here comes first. That's just the way it is. And I used to be afraid to say this. I have a lot of female friends that are divorced. And even some of my female friends that are widowed and now are footloose, loose and fancy free, I'm afraid to say this because women can be really nasty to other women. And I've gotten the questions, well, how come you won't come out with us? And we're always asking you to come out with us, and you always turn us down. And well, I told my husband that I was going to be home after this function, and he's expecting me to be home, and I'm not going to call him and say, I changed my mind. It's that simple. I want to say, to be quite honest, he's taking me out to dinner, and I'd much rather go out to dinner with my husband than to go hang out to dinner with you guys and have a couple drinks. Because I don't go out with the girls and drink. I've never been that way. I don't do that. It's just, I've had strict morals about that, particularly when my children were little. I was asked, but I always declined. And then my girlfriends would just kind of like stop calling me or stop asking me because I wasn't any fun anymore. It wasn't like when I was in college and I would go out and party hardy with them. Or we would all go out as a group, guys and girls. I got married young. I got married at 22. So think about what I said. Most of the girls, young women, were still in the dating pool when I got married. And a lot of them chose their careers. A lot of them ended up in marriages that ended up in divorce. And not all, but quite a few. So when the rubber met the road for me, I would look at, what am I going to lose? What am I going to lose? by going out and doing that. There's a high probability that I'm going to lose my relationship. At some point, my husband is going to say, this isn't going to fly. And I am not of the mindset where well, that's TFB. I don't care what you say. I'm not of that mindset. I may have said it in a fight or an argument, but at the end of the day, I always concede. There's only been a few times where I felt it was necessary to do what I needed to do. And it didn't involve, going out with guys or, partying or anything like that. If you want to do that, then there's a symptom of something wrong in your marriage or your relationship. And I don't care how uncomfortable it gets. When you choose the high road, there will be positive ramifications. If you're not in this horrible relationship where, there's drugs and alcohol and, you're beating each other up I'm talking about just normal, general, male-female interactions. I'm using polite society. So there's just so much to unpack that it's impossible for me to be able to do that in a 45-minute video, because most of his don't stay away from the sound bites. Stay away from the 60-second reels. Because what happened to me was I would go and I would watch some of his 60-second reels, and I would say, oh my gosh, reels of any nature, whether it's makeup, whether it's physical fitness, whether it's, cooking a meal on YouTube, reels are not, they're supposed to be sound bites of the original channel. So, if you see a short on YouTube, it should make you want to go see more. And if you're feeling like, cognitive dissonance, which is what I was feeling, well, there might be a reason behind that. So go with an open mind and see how you feel about it. I know that I was initially peeved, and the more I watched, particularly the ladies' nights, the more my eyes just were like, holy crap. Is this the caliber of women out there today? I mean, I live in a bubble. I'm from a small town. Not that, this kind of stuff doesn't happen here, but, and even one of my daughters who lives out west tells me, Mom, you live in a bubble. You do not know what it's like out here. You don't have a clue. And I'm like, and I don't want to know. I don't want to know, honey. I think it's equally hard for a woman to find a high quality, virtuous, moral guy as it is for a guy to find a high quality, virtuous, moral woman. But there are more women out in the dating pool than there are men. So it's fascinating to me. I mean, I find all of this so completely fascinating. And, you know, anybody can come on to my channel and start talking about, you know, what they agree, what they don't agree with. But I was raised with traditional values, with the expectation that I should go to college, get a job. And I think that my dad he wanted us to go, you know, get something, get a trade or a career. And I think that my dad was ahead of his time. He could see the writing on the wall. He also died at a young age. He was 57 when he passed away, and I was 19. So I think that he could see the writing on the wall, like, holy crap, look at the way the world is going. And that was in 1978. That's not today. But if I chose the route, you know, if I wanted to be single and I didn't want to get married, then, you know, he thought it was important for us to be able to support ourselves, because we weren't going to live at home forever. And because my mother also had to work, you know, part of the time to bring enough money in. You know, my parents were post-World War II couples. You know, they lived through the Depression. You know, I remember my dad telling stories of eating just for potatoes for dinner or nights on end. One of the stories that he told me when I was growing up, that he ate so many potatoes, mashed potatoes, that he would form a circle on his plate. And then he would draw lines and make it look like a pie. And when he picked up, you know, with his fork, a pie section, he would imagine that he was eating his favorite pie, or he would imagine that he was eating, you know, something different than potatoes, because it was really bad. And, you know, he went from that to having to quit school to help his mother. His father died young. Help his mother bring money into the home. Because it was a very, very large family. There was no birth control. And from there, going into the military to fight the war. And when he got out of the military and he met my mother, he was looking for ways to make money. And, you know, my mom went to work as well. So she had times in her life where she didn't have to work. Like the situation that I told you guys about, my dad building my mom a house. And then after my dad passed away, my mother took some time off from work. And then she did retire at one point and then went back to work. But she wasn't remarried. She did get engaged to a really, really nice man. But, you know, they never got married. She had it. She kept his ring. They were exclusive, but he had his place. She had her place. he wanted to marry her, but there was too much at stake. Division of assets, who's going to get what are we going to leave to our kids? I mean, they were both too old for that at that point. So, they went on vacations together. And I don't feel like my mom did anything wrong, because she literally earned her stripes. And she was very religious. Never missed church until she got older and ended up with dementia and that kind of thing. So I was raised with a more traditional family outlook. And really, to be honest, even though I had a job lined up when I was in college to end up moving to that city, I really didn't want that. I wanted to meet a guy that would love me by taking care of me, having a family. And I was really torn, because it's not often that you get a job right out of college. But in the field that I was in, I was top of my class, along with a guy that we were friends. And we really were just friends because he was gay. We were both hired to go to the same advertising agency. And he ended up leaving and moving to New York, and is still working in that field today. And I sometimes look at my situation and think, if I had never gotten married, if I had never had children, I would have probably ended up going with him. But when I look at the whole picture, do I feel like I missed out? No. I've got great children. I had a great first marriage. And even though I have had a lot of challenges in this present relationship, because we merged a family, whenever I encounter a challenge, because there will always be some kind of challenge, life isn't perfect, I look at, we managed to defy the odds. And that's, I often tell, my sister, if I call her, and my brother-in-law is deceased and she never remarried. But she used to commiserate with me, and now she's just quiet, because I know what she's thinking. She's thinking, Susie, shit or get off the pot, okay? Come on now. How many times do you want to bitch and complain about this? And I just had to reach that point where I was like, you know what? It's just easier to be my husband's helper, lover, care about him in these traditional roles, cooking, really good meals. Like, I love doing those things. Like, I might, it might be a Saturday and I'm all rested, and I might say, this is what I'm having for dinner tomorrow, and I'm going to cook you a homemade chocolate cake. And he'll be like, ooh. And then I wake up in tired on Sunday, or with a headache, or I don't feel good, or my body's aching. And I say to him, I know I told you I was going to make you that chocolate cake, but I'm really exhausted and I don't feel too hot. And he'll say, well, you don't have to do that. Just go to the grocery store and get me a chocolate cake. And I'll be like, nope, I said I was going to make you the chocolate cake, so I'm going to try like heck to make you the chocolate cake. Or, I'll table it for another day, but I really try like hell to do what I say I'm going to do. And there's always going to be exceptions to the rules. There's always going to be. But, we did not get to this point easily at all. We did not get to this point where, we would have that dialogue. It would be like, he would come home from work when he was, say, 37 years old. And he would be like, Susie, where's the chocolate cake? Well, I couldn't, I didn't feel like doing it. And he's like, well, shit, don't tell me you're going to make me a chocolate cake if you're not going to make me a chocolate cake. And that would start a fight because I didn't know how to let something like that go. I didn't know how to say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And he would tell me, I looked forward to that all day at my shitty job. I looked forward to that chocolate cake. And now I come home because you promised that for me, and I'm disappointed. And a lot of women don't want to hear that. They want to give this long laundry list of what they had to do in the day. And, all a guy wants to hear is, I'm so sorry. Let me make it up to you. Let me make it up to you. You're right. I shouldn't have said anything. And I did. And I wish I hadn't. So, if there is any takeaway from this video today, I would encourage you to go to the Unplugged Alpha and watch the ladies' nights. Watch those dialogues. And you might be surprised because you might think a certain way now. And then you see these dialogues and you might go, oh my God, is she ever going to shut up? Am I like that? I think I can be like that. I mean, if we're really honest with ourselves as women, and we're in a relationship and we want to see that relationship be a success, it's not just the guy that should have to bend over ass backwards for the woman. No. In fact, I would have to say that the most successful relationships are when the woman is bending over ass backwards for the guy. And if you do that for the guy that you're with, and he's a stand-up guy, you're not going to be sorry. I have gotten more high-quality jewelry in the last 2 years than I've gotten in my whole entire 30 years of marriage. And my husband would buy me jewelry and things like that, but that was very telling to me. That was telling. Now he's choosing the high quality jewelry. So I'm not saying it's going to be perfect because nothing is perfect. but it can get pretty damn close. It can get so close to the point where even when you have a falling out, you're going to sit and you're going to say to yourself, do I want to cash this in and start all over? No. No, I got a good thing going here. I've got a really good thing going here, and I've worked hard, and he's worked hard, and we've worked hard to reach this point. And what's happened in the past does not matter now, because all of those experiences were stepping stones to where we are now. And I'm really very lucky. And I work. It's not like I don't work, but I work a job where I can take a day off for myself, or I can rearrange my schedule, or I can, if I get asked to do a function or something like that, I can choose to run it by him. And I always run it by him. I remember how years ago I would be like, I'm doing this. You can't tell me what to do. I'm doing this. And I don't do that anymore. I don't think it's healthy for a relationship. And there are a lot of women that aren't going to want to hear me say this, but it's not healthy for a relationship. And I'm telling you, when I run something by him, if it's not hurting anybody, if I'm going to do something that isn't compromising to my relationship, when I run something by him, 9 times out of 10, he'll be like, go ahead, I'm going to hang out and, watch music videos, because he's a musician, So, yeah, it wasn't always that way. It had to be earned. Trust had to be earned. And now that I'm the age that I'm at, guess what? I'd rather spend time with him. I'd rather go out to eat with him. I'd rather go to a show with him. I'd rather, hike some trails with him. I'd rather take a day trip with him. And if my girlfriends don't want to hear that, well, TFB. TFB. Too fucking bad. I'm too old for that. Anyway, I just had to share all of that with you. I don't know if there's going to be a part 2. I'm not sure. I would recommend that you go and watch The Unplugged Alpha by Rich Cooper with an open mind, particularly the ladies' nights. And you do not have to agree with him, but I think when you see it all, you can't just watch one video. You have to watch more than one video, because in each video, more stuff comes out. And you see what these guys are made of, and you see that they're not misogynists. They're guys. They're healthy, biological guys. And there is a difference between men and women. And I think the more women understand this and not try to make men women, the better off our world will be for future generations. Okay, my friends, be well, be blessed, be beautiful, because you are, because there is nobody else on the planet like you. And when I say beautiful, I'm talking about in here. I'm talking about when you get honest with yourself and you start to check in and you start to do some introspective work and correct what's not going well for you. In here, you have to do the work, right? You have to. It's not, going to poof happen. That's the whole point of wisdom. That's the whole point of evolving. into the person, the best person you can be. It's not going to just happen. It's not going to poof, there it is. Okay, I'm going to grab it. You have to put the work in and see results. So when I say be well, be blessed, be beautiful, because you are, because there is nobody else on the planet like you, that's true. You are an individual. And you have what it takes to be that beautiful soul. It's up to you to make that choice. Until next time, my friends, I love ya. You know I love ya. Bye-bye.